All right, so the more better. Good.
All right, very good. It's 6:01. I will call this meeting to order January 5th. This is the work session for the Somerset School Board. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alicia Heed, roll call.
Yes, Steve Bigelow.
Here.
Corey Miller.
Here.
Ian McDonald.
Here.
Laurie Belargin.
Here.
Bruce Belargin.
Here.
Danny Erickson. Here. Matt Pugal.
Here. District mission, core values, protocol reminders are listed on the agenda. Please take a minute to review them. And when someone is ready, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So move.
Motion by Lori, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Steve, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 2, public comment. I did not receive any. I don't see anyone in attendance to give public comment. Did you receive any?
I did not.
Okay. We'll move on to item number 3. This is the 2026-27 high school course offerings update presented by Trev Rose, high school principal. Go ahead.
All right, good evening, everybody. So this year, this is something annually that we bring to the board if we're looking at bringing on any new courses or adjusting or editing any of our current courses by nature of description or requirements for them. This year, pretty straightforward. We're not looking at bringing on any new courses at this time, but we are looking at making a couple of different tweaks, and I would say in the grand scheme of things, fairly minor in totality. 0-hour weight training, looking to add a prerequisite for students in 9th grade in order to take that class, for them to have taken introduction to weight training. What the instructors are finding through that class, because of the pace with it, having that foundational teaching and knowledge and concepts taught and experienced for the kids before being in the class for credit, they feel would be very valuable and set the kids up for success. Kids of any grade level are always still welcome to come in and work out in the mornings and be in the weight room in the mornings, but to be in the 0-hour class, that's a prerequisition that's come forward as an instructor recommendation. The second one is for Business 2. Underneath our previous instructor, that class used to be a year-long course, and then they had actually proposed to switch it to a semester-long. We now have a new teacher in that department that's teaching the business courses. And what we're finding is the amount of content that they want to cover in that Business 2 class, really it's more appropriate to take place over the course of the year so they can dive into some deeper topics and do a better job of running our school store to the level that we would like to do things with and partner with those processes. And then the third one is in regards to our physics class. So that's a class that really has started to gain some steam now over the last 2 years as we've had a new instructor come into the district to teach that. What we're finding with that is that when kids take physics right now, if they have not had Algebra 2 first, they're walking into that class not having been exposed to the correct concepts or skills to help them be successful in physics. So looking to add a prerequisite of having completed Algebra 2 prior to taking physics. So pretty straightforward this year. Not looking to bring on any new courses at this time, but those are the proposed changes for the 26-27 school year.
The 0-hour weight training, is there an option to add that as a summer school course so that incoming 9th graders would be able to take that? Because they could take that, right?
So they can always do BFS during the summer with that, but the one in summer is not for credit.
So an incoming 9th grader then would have to take that first before they could do a 0-hour for credit.
For credit, so they could take the intro to weight training first semester and then do 0-hour during second semester for credit. Absolutely. Yep.
I have a question about AP courses. So we have AP chemistry, and I think we used to have AP biology, and I'm
Yep.
not sure what else.
Yep, they alternate every
They
other year.
alternate,
Yep.
okay. So those are considered college level courses, but we don't require chemistry or biology before they take the AP level, shouldn't we? Have we ever talked
I feel
to
like that's a-
science teachers about that?
I feel like that's the progression we follow when they take those classes.
Okay,
So it might not be, that might not be spelled out specifically in our current registration yet, but I feel like that's the progression that they follow.
Can we check on that?
Yep.
Thank you.
And if I can just jump in too, and Matt and I were actually talking about this a little bit earlier. Generally speaking, we want to avoid restrictive prerequisites. So, like, what I would like to see is like sometimes recommended chemistry first.
Right.
But if there's a student who's totally ready, and we talk to their previous teacher, like, oh yeah, this student's ready, we'd want to let them do that and not be bound by a prerequisite. So,
But could we have it listed as recommended or teacher?
yeah, I mean, we certainly, we'd want to talk to the
recommendation or
department to
something?
make sure that's how they feel, you know. They're the experts, they're the ones that are gonna know best, but yeah, there's nothing that would stop us from doing that.
Okay.
And on that same note, how strong is a prerequisite if you had a student that wanted to, you know, say, I think I'm ready for these reasons, is there exceptions to it?
I believe, this is kind of a guess, but I believe that Trent would have the authority to override that, because you do, like, there's a lot, the principal has a lot of authority in terms of class changes and so forth, so I think we could do that.
Flexibility, one thing we would for sure want to look at too is just their prior academic performance as well, and some of their standardized tests and assessments and things like that too.
Anybody else have any questions?
On the general process, does every year teachers get the opportunity to?
Yes.
So they have a memo, and if they're,
Yep.
that's how these things filter out?
Yeah, so one of the first steps in our process is we put out an interest form to kids to get an idea of like, hey, what are some classes that you might be interested in seeing us offer here at the high school? And that's kind of the first step in that we give that data to the teachers so they can see that. And then teachers are able to propose ideas if they have them. If we feel administratively like something might be a good fit or there maybe a route we want to go, then we can kind of try to bring something on to with that. One thing you can always run into is licensing and proper credentialing too, with having the appropriate people on staff to have the license or not. For example, last year when we had the proposal to bring speech on, we had seen over the years that we had a lot of kids taking speech through ECCP, Start College Now, at the colleges, so we were paying for those kids to take it off-site, so we didn't really have the opportunity to deny those.
Okay.
We decided to try to bring that on because we had a staff member in that department that was willing to obtain the license and could go through that process to bring that course on. But yeah, so that's something annually that happens for us, and yes, teachers have the opportunity to bring those forward.
Any other questions? All right, so this will come back to us in 2 weeks for approval. Item number 4, WASB resolutions. Everyone sees the link with all of those. Dr. Grammer, do you
Yep.
want to talk through them?
Yep, absolutely. So WASB resolutions, first a little background on what this is all about. So a WASB resolution, once, if they're passed and supported, they help inform the legislative advocacy that WASB does. So this is a way for districts to say, hey, this is something that I think we need to advocate for. There's a process to bring that forward. So every one of these resolutions was at one time sponsored by a specific district that wrote it. They present it to WASB. A committee looks at it. Sometimes they tweak it, sometimes they change it, sometimes they completely deny it, and then sometimes they bring them forward. These are those that they brought forward. We have a very unique situation with these resolutions. It's the first time ever that WASB has 2 completely opposing resolutions. So it's gonna create a fun thing to navigate for Lori, who is our WASB delegate. So the purpose of today is to get your feedback on these resolutions, if you have any. Know that Lori and I went through them, and we went resolution by resolution, spent quite a bit of time talking it through and coming up with our recommendation. So when it says administrative recommendation, know that Lori and I talked this through, but we want everyone to have a chance to understand what the resolutions are all about and ask any questions. I am not going to claim to be an expert on all of them, but I think I've got enough kind of rudimentary knowledge about how they all work and what they're all about. I've mentioned this before. Whenever I bring a recommendation to you from really anything, but specifically when it's something like an outside organization, I'm going to provide advice that I think is in the best interest of the Somerset School District. That will always be, sometimes there will be things that like, oh yeah, it makes sense at the state level, but maybe not for us. I'm always going to give you advice that I feel is in the best interest of our school district, and these all fall into that.
There are a lot, there are 12 of them, and they're all relatively detailed. I'm gonna go relatively quickly, but at any point, just stop me, ask questions. If you wanna dig in a little bit more, we can certainly do that. So the first resolution, opposing the removal of caps for the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program. So the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program exists at 4 different levels. There's one for Wisconsin, or one for Milwaukee specific, one for Racine specific, then there's a statewide, and then one also that's more geared towards special education. There are caps that are in place. The enrollment cap is about the percentage of students that can participate, and then there's the federal poverty level income cap that these are open to students that qualify based on their family income. The thought is that this program is designed to open up opportunities for kids that might otherwise not be able to afford a different choice. We support retaining the caps because those caps protect us from having it be too much of a hit at any one time. Just for reference, there's about an $89,000 expense for our school district to fund these programs right now. That's 7 students that take part in these programs, and what that does, it takes $89,000 of state aid. It does not affect the revenue cap. So the amount that we can levy stays the same, but it removes that from state aid, which, as you know, when we talked about this at the annual meeting other times, what that does is increase the burden on the local taxpayer. So that's about a $90,000 increased burden to the local taxpayer. So that's what that's all about there. So supportive of keeping those caps in place. The next one, very interesting, revisions to the school district report card. This is another one, you've heard me talk about this. I am 100% in support of being more consistent with report cards and not changing the target. It's confusing for internal and external stakeholders. It creates a situation where it looks like people are trying to hide stuff, even if that's not the case. And I think in most cases it actually wasn't, but it creates that impression for sure. So conceptually, supportive of the idea of measures to create more consistency with the state report card, but the way it was written is very specific, like equal weight for growth versus achievement, and a lot of very specific things. Lori and I actually went in and looked at the report cards from the district that was sponsoring this, and it's a super high achieving district, and the reality is either way their report card scores are going to be high, but it was beneficial for them. I think the resolution is too specific and too in the weeds to be supportive of. I'd rather see a resolution that was more guidance to DPI stating we need to see more consistency with the report card and lock in the metrics so we don't change them year after year. That's 2. 3 is about funds distribution. So this is a really specific sort of nitty-gritty one. This is about allowing DPI the ability to distribute state and federal education funds intended for educational programs. So if money is released from the state or the feds, that DPI would be able to distribute that as they see fit. Supportive of that in the name of efficiency. We've run into a few situations where funding was questionable, like when it was going to be released, and it creates problems for us when you're counting on certain money to come forward and you create a budget based on that, and if it's delayed or called into question, it creates confusion and potentially holes in the budget.
Well, does this all look at special education funding that we're having right now?
It really doesn't. This doesn't, no, it's not totally separate issue. This isn't about new money. This is just about when it comes out, DPI, yes, you can distribute it, and they don't need to have another layer in there. Yeah, good question though, Bruce. We'll talk about that a little bit later on tonight.
What would the other layer be?
Well, it could be legislative.
Okay.
So that's probably the most direct would be legislative oversight, where the money's released and then there's legislative action that freezes or pauses those funds. Good question. All right. 4. This one is very straightforward, supportive. The idea is right now, it used to be a school district could go to referendum when they chose to do so. Certain limits, like obviously it's always encouraged to have it on a regular election cycle, but sometimes there are situations where schools would choose not to. I don't think that's a very good idea, but school boards had the right to choose that. There have been increasing limits on the scheduling of referenda for school districts. I am supportive of local control. We have elected officials that are elected to do what's in the best interest of their community, in this case Somerset, and I would want you to be able to make that decision when it's right to go to referendum, when it's not right to go to referendum. This is especially important because the way state funding is trending, for us and for most districts in the state, there's fewer dollars coming from the state, more on local taxpayers. So it creates a situation where there's a need for more referendum. That good, bad, or indifferent, it just is. That's the reality. More districts have to go to referendum, especially operationally, where that used to not be an issue. I think that local school boards should have that right to decide when it's right to do that. Then we're on to,
D kind of just,
Yep.
the description kind of reads opposite of what you just said. Can you clarify? Like it's basically saying, I read it as, more power to DPI, and you're saying, no, what it's really doing is putting more
are you on
decision on.
4?
Four.
On 4, so WASB opposes the limits on scheduling referendum. Right now, there are limits legislatively on when a school district, so this is opposing those limits, saying we want those limits removed, so it's up to a school district and the board to
Okay.
decide.
I get you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet. All right, number 5, this was an interesting one. I'll go to the end. We are supportive in theory, but we believe that this is one of those situations, so this is about categorical aid to fund support school-based substance use and disorder prevention and treatment services. This is certainly important. Substance abuse is a serious issue, and it's one that we play an important role in, but at the same time, when we talk about increasing funding, there's a lack of support at the county and the state level. We feel if we're going to be talking about new money, we also need to be supporting counties because we run into situations where more and more is put on the shoulder of public schools to deal with a lot of the issues that society has to deal with. And you end up in a situation where we just can't keep on taking on more and more issues. So certainly supportive of more support for substance abuse. Don't necessarily think the school district is the way to answer that question. Next one, this is one we looked at a couple times and thought, well, of course, because the resolution is to more collaboration, including the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation around transition services. Transition services are really critical to students, helping them transition from school to their post-secondary life. We're talking about students with disabilities that need additional support. This is another department that already exists. They're just calling on more collaboration, and certainly that would seem to make sense. Next one, this is one that we are not supportive of. This is universal state covered meals. So this is the idea that all students would essentially have access to free school meals. The reason we're opposed is because there's no new money associated with that. So if we have a situation where we have all meals covered by the state, that money is no longer available. That's being spent on meals for everyone. There's no new money. That's going to be a decrease potentially for public education. We already have a mechanism for families in need. We certainly want to do a great job of getting that information out there and ensuring that all families that are eligible have access to free and reduced meals, but not necessarily for everyone because that just takes money out of the public education pot. Next one is, this is about the Get Kids Ready initiative, which what that is, there's a new funding mechanism for, it says 4K, but it's really not technically 4K. They're readiness programs that can be covered in private settings. So like some districts will have a 4K program where you offer services with private partners and or in-house. We have all of ours in-house, but we certainly could have other partners. This is to create a different sort of program. It's about readiness. It doesn't require licensed teachers. There are certain requirements that aren't in place. What this is saying is if we're going to do this sort of work, we want the same level of expectation, same level of accountability. The argument is it's money from a different pot, but we've all been following state politics and enough to know that there's not a lot of new money being put into public education right now. So when I am going to call out support for school choice, I'm always gonna follow it up with, I think the expectations need to be the same and the accountability needs to be the same.
So you're talking about resolution 9, I believe.
Oh, did I skip? Yep, I'm sorry, you're right. That was 9. Public school endowment, yes, supportive. Because going back, I don't wanna say, I don't really see that happening, but certainly we're supportive of a mechanism that would allow for state dollars to sit in an endowment, essentially earn interest and be dedicated to public education. Supportive of that concept. I don't know if that ever really would get any traction I just don't see it really happening, but anyway, supportive of the concept. Now on to 9, thank you, sorry for the confusion. Any question on the 8 or 9? Because I just talked a lot on one I skipped. All right, now the fun ones. 10 and 11, this is the one I mentioned. They're opposing resolutions. So, lot of interesting, it really actually will be interesting for Lori. Dan, you might want to consider canceling the cruise just so you can go over this, because it's going to be just a fascinating conversation about this.
Dan was there for the entire discussion of it last year.
Okay,
So one of these resolutions was discussed,
it was the decoupling, right?
yes.
Yes, okay. And there's a lot of information on this because again, WASB's like, we know this creates kind of a goofy situation for you because we have 2 resolutions that are in opposition. The idea of decoupling, what that simply means is when we are talking about parental choice programs, the funding can either be completely separate, like there's a separate budget at the state level that is for school choice programs. At one point that was the case for certain school choice programs. When it's coupled, it's saying that it's under that same equalization aid formula that we use to figure out how much money we have to run our schools. We are supportive of the idea of keeping it linked. We oppose decoupling. Reason being, it's very transparent for the local taxpayer when they're joined together. We know exactly how much we are spending to fund school choice programs. That's all very available. The reason I think that the resolutions don't really get to the issue. The issue is no new funding for public education. That's the bigger issue. Whenever you have a situation where school funding has not kept up with inflation, and then we have other things that chip away at the money that's dedicated to public schools, it creates a bigger hole. Year after year that happens. So my position would be, if there's going to be something like an expansion of the school choice program, new money needs to come in from the state to cover what that cost would be, as opposed to having it chip away. Because we know, again, we've talked about this quite a bit, it's not like we're sitting on a pile of cash to run our schools. We run a tight budget, there's not a lot of flexibility. Every time we lose money from the state and that shifts to the local taxpayer, I think that's unfair. I think we're getting to the point where the tax burden for our local taxpayer is getting proportionately unreasonable, and we want to resist these efforts to have that not be as transparent for people to understand. That's 10 and 11, and then 12 is very simple. WIAA, they're encouraging us to make sure that we partner with WIAA and that we would avoid resolutions that specifically dictate WIAA practices. So WIAA essentially runs independently, and we partner with them to be able to participate in the athletics, but there was previously some more conversation about more oversight with WIAA. We're saying, no, we trust you to do what you need to do, and that we're not gonna have resolutions that dictate your day-to-day business. So those are the 12 WASB resolutions for 2026.
Do we have any immediate questions about them? These will come back in 2 weeks, so everyone, I encourage you to spend 2 weeks, do some research, we'll have another discussion.
My question is, as we research, what other resources do you recommend that you use to make your in-depth analysis?
Yeah, good question. So if you go, you have your login for the WASB website. Their packet has a lot of detailed information, and then like for the decoupling, there's some separate information that will give really specific information describing that decoupling conundrum. But yeah, I would go directly to WASB because it really is their stuff. Again, we're not recommending legislative changes. This is about informing their advocacy platform. So, yeah, as Matt said, take a look, and then if you have questions or want additional resources, feel free to reach out. I also would go to some of the state newspapers, some of the larger newspapers, to see what they were saying about some of these, because sometimes that analysis kind of cuts through a little bit more quickly than reading all the stuff from WASB.
So in 2 weeks, as we come back, we have a discussion, you know, resolution by resolution, or all of them in general, and then we'll vote as to how we want Lori to speak on behalf of us. Any other questions on these? Okay. Moving on, item number 5, Neola technical corrections.
Yep.
Do you want to cover those, Lori, Danny?
They're just technical corrections. Some of it is just, punctuation marks, nothing, we don't even need to approve them. It's just for public record.
Got it.
I had one question. It was under the technical correction. Scrolling down, very slow. 95 or 9150. Let me see, which one is that?
School visitors.
School visitors. The policy states we have a
Is that on here?
It's a technical correction.
Just a technical. But I was just wondering if, it says we have a physical copy of the policy at every school. I was wondering if we do.
That's a good
Yeah,
question.
we do.
We do?
Oh,
Okay.
there you go.
We
Okay.
have had this address before.
Have we?
Yeah.
A long time ago? I don't remember.
I don't remember when exactly, but we have talked about
Okay,
this before.
I'm good.
Any other questions on these? Okay, these will not come back then on the next agenda, correct? Got it. All right, moving on. Item number 6, budget update.
All right, so in just a second, I'm gonna turn this over to Rod. So if you remember when we did our budget work for this school year, we said that we're gonna start those conversations for the next budget cycle earlier and in the winter, and this is actually kind of the first of those installments of saying, okay, what's changing and what do we need to be aware of? So we're all well versed in what impacts our budget and the state budget as we get into the next cycle. And there was some very timely things happening that we thought we would start that process now. This is specific about special education funding. Rod will get into the details, but essentially what we're dealing with is what we expected, and when I say we, all schools in the state of Wisconsin, what we expected for funding from the state to help offset the cost of special education services is gonna come in much lower than we had expected. And Jesse's here, so if you have specific questions about special education and how that funding works or where it goes, like what sorts of things does it fund, she's here to help out with that as well. So I'll turn it over to Rod.
All right. So as you've probably seen in Dave's memo, the TPI had estimated that we'd be reimbursed at 42%. And now they're currently saying that's looking to be more around 35%, so 7% difference. And that's projected to be about $140,000 shortfall based on what we had budgeted. So it's not all bad news. A little bit of the good news is when I projected the budget, I only projected reimbursement at 40% instead of 42. DPI usually comes in a little bit short every year, and I had known that, so I dropped it down 2%. So if I were to budget 42%, we'd be looking at about a $200,000 shortfall versus the 140. DPI is currently saying that they expect this 35% to be a little bit higher. They're estimating a little bit low right now. So any percentage higher than that, we're gonna gain about another 33,000. So if we jump from 35 to 36, we'd be looking at closer to $100,000 shortage. So if we can even get it to somewhere around 37%, it's gonna cut that in half. So that's kind of what we're looking at for right now. That's all I had on the topic, unless you guys have any questions.
So when it comes to 45% projected or estimated in 26, 27, you
Yep.
think that's gonna be short as well?
Yeah, they typically say it's between 1% and 3% short.
Okay.
And this year, the numbers that DPI projected are coming in quite a bit higher than what they had estimated, so that's why it dropped from 42 to 35.
And this is an interesting one. There's a lot of political banter around this topic. And the reality is, even though we have, in my memo, it says the promise, I want to be clear, the legislators did exactly what they said they were going to do. The amount of money that they were pledging for special education reimbursement was some certain amount. It was however millions of dollars, that's how much it was. They estimated that to be that 37, 42, 45, 42 and 45%. That was their estimate. Real costs are coming in higher than that. So they never said, we will pay 42% of special education costs, period. They said, this is how much money we will pay. We believe that to be 42%. The reality is costs keep climbing for everything. So when we make these estimates, what I would recommend when we're looking at that budget, wherever we come in this year with the actual number, hopefully it's higher than 35, like Rod said, we would make that same adjustment to that 45 so we don't end up, like, we reduce it by the same amount that we're off by that 42. So we've got a metric to say this seems to be what makes sense. Whenever we build a budget, we build it on assumptions. So this would be one of those things where the assumption we're gonna have to change as we go into next year to make sure that we're landing closer to our target. One thing I wanna point out in this memo that it may be confusing, the way I worded it wasn't very clear. The very last bullet point, our next steps, I talked about the fact that we will use contingency money from construction to offset. I don't mean using contingency monies to support special education services. What I mean is when we have that budget shortfall, that impact ultimately hits Fund 10, our regular budget, as we transfer money to support special education. We now will need to support more because we're getting less from the state. So when we talk about the contingency spend down, we're trying to be really judicious with this and spend money only on things that we feel are needs that we would have spent anyway, thus taking that burden off the general fund. That's what I mean about that offset a little bit. So even though we've got bad news here, we have good news with the contingency money that's available that helps offset that a little bit, so we don't end up in a big hole at the end of the year.
However, that contingency money can only be used for things that were outlined in the referendum.
Right, they have to be associated with the original question, yes, yep.
So when do we get the actual amount from the state? When do we know that?
That is a good question. Do you know when we get the actual?
They don't usually finalize it until towards the end of June. So right now, they're reimbursing us at 35%. Each month, they send us a payment at 35%. And then at the end of the year, they figure out how much money's left and then divvy out the rest of it.
And then there's no additional federal money that comes with special education? That would be.
There is federal money, but not additional than what we.
Not that would make
Yeah.
up any of this
Mhm.
difference.
So is the amount in question too? Versus percentage?
The amount.
Is there anything static about it? I mean, what are they
The
guessing?
only thing static is the amount at the state level. That amount of money is static. How that gets distributed is the part that's different. So it's the same pool of money. That did not change. But for us, it's at about $140,000.
But when you say they're looking at the money coming in, is it like a race to who submits the reimbursement the fastest?
No.
Like how do they do that fairly so that everybody gets shorted by the same percentage?
What they do is we submit all of our special education costs to DPI. And then they work this, so say we submitted $1 million last year of costs They say we're gonna reimburse you at 35% of that 1 million. So each time that percent goes up or down, that's how it's affecting us.
But the formula is the same. All districts have the same formula. They submit the same way. They would be distributed the same way. That those submittals are coming in higher than what they anticipated, and that's what's bringing the amount down.
And some school districts are submitting their data late. So what they're saying right now is they still don't have all the data from some of the bigger schools like Milwaukee, which is a big problem, is they submit all their data late, and then they take a big chunk of it.
Any other questions on this? So there's no action needed, this is just
No,
information.
just information.
So if anybody has any questions, obviously, reach out. But
Yep.
We'll look for an update in a few months, I would assume?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, yeah, we'll keep you updated on this, but then we'll also now be bringing more periodic budget updates. As assumptions change and we start to build out the budget for the subsequent year, then as assumptions change, we'll always let you know. So we'll let you know what those assumptions are. We're assuming this many students, we're assuming funding at this level. All those will be built into that budget, we'll share that, and then if we need to adjust that because we get more specific information, that's sort of that process. You start with really broad assumptions and a really wide range, and then you become more and more narrow as those assumptions become specific.
Any questions for Jesse on special education? Or anything you want to add? You're sitting here, so.
Yeah, no, So I'm guessing there's certain things that we can write in there part of special education, and do they then review those? Does the state review all of that stuff that we submit and say that is or isn't part of this special education? I was just wondering if people are, we're getting more money, we're lumping more in. That could end up.
There's not a lot of room for that. It's pretty specific. It's like how many of this, how many of that. You're not adding other items. So what's driving the cost up and then the amount we get back is just increased cost. Like if you assume, like just the programs and services we offer, staffing, all of that is more than it was a couple of years ago. And they didn't account for that inflation or that increase as much as they would have hoped. We talked about this before. Our numbers in special education are not changing that much in terms of the overall percentage, but the needs that we're serving are becoming, they're becoming more urgent. So higher needs means higher costs, and that's not just us. That's an issue across the board, not just a Wisconsin thing either. That's a known thing that you're hearing in every corner of the country.
So it could require more aides, or if you have a kid who has an IEP written that the child needs any support in a classroom or one-on-one support, some of them, that increases all the costs.
And we have to specifically tie licenses to that, right? So we have to put in our purchase services or our personnel, and we have to specifically outline who's doing what, making sure that they're appropriately licensed for that. So it's all taken into consideration, and it has to be specifically allocated for our special ed students.
One thing, I definitely applaud the legislature for addressing this issue, recognizing that there's an issue and that the shortfall in state funding. I would encourage them and have encouraged our local legislators to continue to look at this and come up with a more stable funding mechanism that's more predictable.
Sounds good. Anything else? Well, thank you all for the information. And that takes us into item number 7 then, right? Open enrollment.
Yep.
And
Now Jesse's gonna get a chance to talk too. So every year in January, we will be bringing to you and have in the past brought to you our space determination for open enrollment. The way this works is we need to bring a recommendation for approval for space determination for open enrollment by grade level, but then also by special education program. So we're gonna start with Jesse providing an overview of caseloads in special education, and then ultimately our recommendation for open enrollment, and then I'll address the open enrollment space determination that we used for general education.
So most of you guys heard me talk through this last year, but I'll for you're new, so I'll dive into it a little bit more again this year, but really, this memo kind of outlines basically the students that we have here in district, right? Currently now, some are open enrolled, we take them into our consideration already, they're already in our numbers because we accepted them for open enrollment. So there are students right now that are receiving special education or our resident districts, right? So we just need to ensure that we are able to provide kind of equitable services for all of our students that we currently have, and to make determinations if we could accept students that have IEPs that are open enrolling. So what we do to kind of, it's not a perfect science, but these are the things that we take into consideration. So the first part is the staffing, the planning guidelines. So there's a number of things we take into consideration for the planning guidelines, right? So you can see them all listed there, the federal and state special education laws, the different statutes, the different rules that we have to follow. Different guidance that comes out through DGI, different due process hearing or state complaint decisions. So I put this one on there just to kind of take into consideration. So the state processes lots of different complaints. So in the last few years, a big number of complaints have come through with students on modified days or shortened days. So anytime we reduce a student's day, so these parents were feeling that this was not legal, right? We weren't following the appropriate guidance. So then DPI puts more kind of rules into place to say, like, if you are going to shorten a student's day, these are the things you have to be able to document. These are the things, the resources that you have to provide, right? So it impacts kind of the whole system. So those are some of the things we have to take into consideration. You know, just looking at our state licensing requirements, looking at like the students that we service here right now for what needs they are, right? Because it can change at any given moment. A student can move into Somerset and we have to provide those services. Right now, we don't service any students that are blind, but somebody could move in and then we would have to provide those services. So looking at kind of what those services are. So kind of looking at district-wide, looking at our overall just staffing or FTE for all of our special ed staff and paraprofessionals. Looking at just overall building space, kind of total enrollment, different enrollment projections, and then kind of the biggest thing is just maintaining that we are able to provide kind of that equitable services in the least restrictive environment. So what that looks like for each student is unique, and it's going to differ based on their needs, but looking at kind of what we have in front of us right now today, that's what we have to take into consideration. So that's the first part. The second part is looking at the caseload ratio guidelines. So if you scroll down, the federal government, they don't provide any minimum or maximum for caseloads, because really you could have a student that is qualified for an intellectual disability that has these unique needs, but then that same student that's qualified under that same disability area have very, very different needs. So it's really hard to put a very kind of clear cut, like, this is what your minimum or maximum for a caseload should be. So they leave it up to districts to kind of put that in place. So we have to kind of look at all of the students that we're servicing right now and set that threshold. So based on the students that we have now, this is kind of the different programs that we provide at our elementary, middle, and high school. And then we align kind of how many special ed teachers, support staff to students. So again, this is not like a, you know, clear cut, this is what it has to be, but this is where we want to stay within this threshold to be able to provide kind of those same equitable services to make sure that we can get all of the students what they need. So again, where we want to be. So that's the two things, right? We look at the planning guidelines and then we look at the caseload thresholds. Then kind of the next part of data that I included, I think it's helpful to kind of understand, you know, where we want to stay for the caseload maximum. That's just our goal. If we have more students move in, right, sometimes that happens. Last year in middle school, we had a ton of students move in that had IEPs, and so that bumped our caseloads up to where we want to be, but we continue to provide those services. I roll then so like our 4th graders into 5th grade, our 8th graders into 9th grade, and I kind of roll those caseloads over for what currently right now where our projected caseloads would be. So you can see those numbers and kind of how it compares to where we want to be at the maximum. The other piece of data that I include, because right, it's constantly changing our numbers in special education, our highest number of referrals are going to come at the elementary level. So you can see the number of referrals last school year was at 41. Right now, currently for this school year, we're at 22. So, we're about halfway there, and we're about, half of the, so we can expect probably at least another 20 referrals to come in. So taking all of it, because some of these are not at our max capacity, but knowing that we're going to have more students qualify, so we don't want to push that threshold to the max and already kind of put more undue kind of burden on those students that are trying to provide the most equitable services. So taking all of that into consideration, if you keep scrolling down.
I'm gonna ask a question.
Yeah. Mhm.
Sorry, so the
No, that's
open
okay.
enrollment, 26-27 program available space, zeros for all of them. So
Mhm.
can you explain that to me?
Yeah, no, great question. So, yep, I was gonna say, if we keep scrolling down, so for next school year, based on if you can kind of see like the current caseload maximum, right? So that's where we wanna stay, to what the projection is gonna be, and then also taking into consideration, we're going to have more students being evaluated and possibly more students qualified. We're saying that we would not be accepting any students that apply for open enrollment if they had an IEP, because we know we would already be at that, above that threshold. Does that make sense now?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just curious, so,
So currently, that's,
okay.
I was getting to that point, Steve, is that we would not be taking any students that had IEPs that wanted, if they were a Hudson resident and wanted to come to Somerset with an IEP, we would say, we're already at our capacity, so we're not gonna be able to accept that student with an IEP.
Good. Was it already open enrolling right now?
And so they're already taken into consideration with these numbers. So if they're already open and enrolled right now, and we've already accepted that, right? Because when we do this every January, certain things can change, and, if we were to hire another special ed teacher, that would change if we were to have a 7th special ed teacher at the elementary, it would change our capacities.
So if you're an open enrolled student, you're already getting the services, you can't not
You
get
won't,
anymore?
no, they would.
Even if you like bunch of things that more kids move in?
If
And
they're
this has
already
been-
getting the services, because we
Mhm.
have in the past had kids who have open enrolled, and then they qualify for services.
Yeah, so that's a whole different, yep, and we have lots of conversations with students that are in referral of, okay, if they do qualify, if they meet, the requirements and you wanna receive those services, you'd have to return to your resident district to receive those services.
And then, is this this is similar to what other schools do as well, right?
Mhm.
A lot of them are capped, I think we had talked,
I would say most are, and when we
Yeah.
talk with other
other
directors,
schools are capped for open enrollment
Yeah, there's a
or surrounding.
a massive shortage of special education teachers. So there's a teacher shortage overall, but that's way amplified in the world of special education. So no one is sitting on like a bank of a bunch of special education teachers ready to roll for more students. That's just not the reality that we're living with,
And the
so,
state's not paying us anything to.
and that
for them?
doesn't help either. Yeah, yep,
yeah,
And we have a shortage of special education aides as well.
yeah,
Correct.
yep.
Yeah, sometimes I would say the majority, there are districts that would have, like, speech and language, like, so you can't just say like, special ed's closed. We still have to look at and review every IEP that comes in, and like I said, maybe certain numbers can change at that point. But even our speech numbers right now are very, very high, our occupational therapy numbers are really, really high, so we would still say for those services, we wouldn't be able to accept them.
And of the 18, 20 some expected referrals, is that considering all referrals or referrals with IEPs?
So those would be just the initial referrals. So initial referrals, so that would be just a general education student that hasn't gone through that evaluation process yet. And if they do qualify, then they would be a student with an IEP. Yep, so just.
Yep. Yeah, so the referral is for special education, that's what it's being referred to.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yep.
Any other questions? Anything else you want to add?
No.
All right,
Okay.
thanks, Jesse.
Yep.
So the next one is, so I gave her the hard one, I gave the easy one. The next one is way more formulaic. This is just for open enrollment for general education. So this is just we look by grade, and we look at our class size. And you'll notice in column B, it says class size for open enrollment purposes, meaning we haven't established officially class size guidelines. That is something we'll be doing still this year. But we have a good place to start. We already have what would be considered sort of the top end of those class size guidelines, so that's a starting point for that conversation. But this is what we use for the space we have available. We had quite a conversation about the elementary because it's very interesting. Right now you'll see that we're saying 6 JK classrooms, which is really 3 because there's an AM and a PM, so 3 physical rooms, but then 5 physical rooms for each other grade. Technically, we wouldn't have all that space. We would have to max out all of them. We have enough for 5 for some grade levels, but not necessarily for all. We'd have to reconfigure. But we know that we're not going to max out all grade levels in 1 year, so we did this analysis based on that 5. So you'll see the capacity in column D. That would be if you have the 22 students in 6 classrooms, gives a capacity of 132, and then we project the enrollment. The projected enrollment just takes this year's enrollment and rolls it forward 1 grade. So if you see that 85 in kindergarten, that's how many current JK students we have. What we're using for JK is just what we have. Our assumption is same number of kids. We're hoping it's more, but our assumption is the same number of kids. So that's where that number comes into play, and then column F would be the available spaces. So based on this, we would have enough room for 47 open enrolled JK students. That would be great. We don't really anticipate having 47, but that's the space that we're making available for that. So you can see all those numbers all the way through. I believe the lowest we have is 20 at grade 1. Again, that'd be a great problem to have if we had 20 open enrollment applications for a grade level. At some point, we may end up in a situation where we have to have a different conversation. Right now, we do not. And that conversation is, do we consider open enrollment as a specific growth strategy, and are we willing to hire more staff to do that, or alter our building arrangement, or like great case scenario, we're seeing 10% increase in enrollment year over year, and we have to have a conversation about a new building. Now, obviously, I don't anticipate that happening in the next few years. That would be probably a decade down the road. We have to see a lot of growth to get to that point. But right now, we're in a pretty safe space that we can accept a lot of an open enrollment in that would just help make up for the declining enrollment that we've had over the past few years. So the idea then, we would bring this forward the next board meeting for approval, and then those become the numbers that we have when we do our determination. There are different processes in place, like if you have more applicants than spaces available, there's a process you go through, but I don't think we're gonna have that issue at all with the minimum number being 20 spaces available.
Any questions for either of them? No? Okay, so this will come back for approval as presented. And if you have questions in the meantime, so you know how to reach out.
Yep.
Item number 8, superintendent report.
All right, we got quite a few things on here. So the first one, we almost made it through without a invoice, but we had one small invoice from Wold. You'll notice that it's total earned through 100% of construction admin, so this is likely the last we will see from Wold. There'll still be a few stragglers from Market and Johnson, but on the architectural side, this should be it, I believe. So that's just a small one there. Next one will be our longest conversation under my report, the construction contingency. I'm sharing this document, and I share this with a little bit of trepidation because it's very much a draft. It's like kind of an empty document, but I wanted you to be part of the conversation from the beginning to see what our thinking was as we talk about this contingency spend down. Rod's been doing a really nice job of keeping us up to speed with what to do with the contingency money. So what we're talking about here is money that was set aside as part of the referendum to take care of the incidental things that happen that you can't really plan for. So any construction company is going to want to have contingency dollars in there so they can do their job, because you can't plan for everything. You're going to make assumptions. You open up a wall, you find stuff you didn't anticipate, and you've got to spend money differently. Fortunately, we're in a position where we came in under that contingency amount, so there was money left over. So that's part of this basis for funds that are available to spend on the specific question. That's what we were talking about before. Rod reached out directly to our bond counsel, the lawyer that helped us with the referendum, and they confirmed that, no, you need to spend this money on the specific question. We need a new generator at the middle school. We can't do that out of these funds because that wasn't on the most recent question. The middle school wasn't covered. So we've got a situation where the elementary is covered, all the athletic facility in the stadium, and then the surrounding areas that lead up to that. That's what essentially we can cover. That includes any ancillary support, what you need to support those facilities, that can all be included. But these are very rough numbers. And as I've said from the beginning, we are not in a position to be able to spend on bells and whistles. We need to spend this money on basic operations, things we need, and in some cases, things that we think will offset the expense over time. So what you're gonna see here is sort of some basic materials. You're gonna see some school security and safety enhancements, and you're gonna see some facility enhancements that will help us take care of the overall facility. So we did this before we knew this was gonna be a winter like it has been already, but you'll see some stuff in there that is specific about snow removal, utility vehicle, and then the snow pusher, which is one of the cage plows, one of the real wide plows that would hook onto the skid steer that will allow us to move some considerable snow. That doesn't mean we still won't be contracting out for snow removal. That's still something we'll continue to do. We couldn't do all of our own snow removal, but what we could do is once the main snow is removed, we can have our folks go out and clean up in those in-between times, because you're gonna create piles and messes and they can go in and do that. This equipment will help do that. The utility vehicle have a plow, that's more for like sidewalks and pathways, but then also that's gonna help because it'll have a better spreader for us to get sand and salt out. That's what that one is about. This also, we have a very old gator that we've had on site for a long time. You literally start it with a screwdriver that you have to jam in the ignition to turn. It's in rough shape. So this would also be the vehicle that would be used to traverse the district for sporting events, but then as we talked about also just to monitor the district for safety and security. What I should mention before I start going down this list, Rod and I met with our partners that essentially hold on to the bond money. So what happens, you pass a referendum, in this case $22.9 million. That money is released, but we don't hold on to it and just have it sit like anyone would do. You'd say, let's put this someplace where it's gonna earn some interest and they can help manage. So that goes to our partner that holds on to it. We did really well with interest because bond rates were high throughout the course of that money being held. It was 1.1 million that we made in interest. That interest also can only be spent on the specifics of that question. So between that earned interest, part of that was already budgeted, but it came in higher than expected. So there was a projected interest amount, but we came in much higher. That's what gets us ultimately to this about $400,000. This will still need to be refined, as I said earlier. But what we received today, which was really good news, we were under the very conservative assumption that we'd need to spend this all down by January 29th, which is the final benchmark, which was based on really good advice, but we knew that was worst case scenario. We found out today, because of the way our payments were structured, previous administration did a really nice job of keeping up on that and being sort of aggressive with the spending of the money and keeping the project going. And by doing that, it created a situation where we do not need to spend it all down by January 29th. We have more time, we can be really thoughtful. I do not anticipate big changes in what we have listed, but I could see some changes in the priorities. I'll share an example. Right now, 6, we have a certain square foot portion, we're still working on getting what that square foot portion is, of the elementary roof that was not replaced and is in need of replacement and repair. That's one we were afraid we weren't going to be able to do because we wouldn't be able to have that done by January 29th. So we had it listed, but we weren't sure if we were going to be able to address it. Now that we know we likely would be able to do it, that's an immediate savings. That's something that it would have been great if that was taken care of in the project. If we can do that, that's just going to save that money down the road when we don't need to do that. So we'll be adjusting the rank order of these as we get into it. Also want you to know that when we're talking about anything that is sort of facility-based, if it wasn't covered here, it's going to end up on the long-term facility plan. It's not like if we don't cover this now, these needs go away. They'll just go to that long-term facility plan that we'll be sharing in the spring or summer with you when we have that done. And Wold will be helping us create that. So that's quick overview. I'm gonna go through the different items. If you have specific questions, just stop me at any point with questions. So I talked about the 2 snow removal issues. Then we have elementary security camera upgrades. Our elementary cameras, there's a good portion of them that they are Verkada cameras, our system that we use, but they're an old generation. They will be in need of repair. I was really surprised that the estimate for that cost was as high as it is, but that needs to be broken down piece by piece. Jason's working directly with Verkada to get a detailed quote so we'll know exactly what we're talking about. So real rough numbers, if we went sort of everything we needed, upwards of $150,000.
Do you have multiple quotes for that since the price is so high?
We don't yet. Yeah,
We will be getting.
well, we will, except Verkada is our, so it would not be the camera system because we have to use that system because it has to integrate with what we currently have. So this is more an expansion of something. When we went to Verkada, there was a bid process. So this would be, if there are different providers, we could, but we can't go to a different camera system. Yep, but anything else that goes over that $25,000 would have the competitive bids for all of this. That's the one that is a little dicey because we're locked into a certain system that we've already committed to. Next one, parking lot, mill and overlay. Elementary paths and around the stadium. This is one we talked about like early on. So this was on that wish list that was generated early on through the construction process. There were areas that we were able to repair in terms of asphalt and sidewalks. There were other areas that were still in need that were deprioritized. That would be addressing that. I talked about the roof replacement already.
And Dave, can I just jump in for a
Yeah,
second? So
absolutely.
a lot of these on this list were part of the project initially, but when we were budgeting, we were right there.
Yes.
And they were worried of going over, so we went back through with the group and kind of pulled out, okay, what items can we pull out of this to try to make sure that we finish under budget?
Yeah,
Because we can't go $1 over.
right,
So we have to go under, so a lot of these, like you said, were on that wish list
yep,
from the beginning, so they were part of the project,
yes,
part of the design, part of everything. They just said, well, these are big ones you can pull out and still operate the way you want.
yeah,
Keep it, make sure you're under budget, and then at the end, spend them, easily add these back in.
exactly, yeah. Yep, thanks for that clarification. I believe even a utility vehicle was part of the conversation at one point. I'm not totally certain on that, but I thought that it was. Next one, high school lighting, choir 2 offices. So this is lighting that has not been upgraded to LED. So this would have a eventually a payback point where it would cover itself. We certainly want all of our lights to be upgraded because you can save a lot of money by having modernized lighting. Lunch tables, that's pretty straightforward. We're short on lunch tables and they're in rough shape. Football field mats, these are the mats that go across the track that allow us to have kids walk back and forth without ruining the track. And then we have elementary desks. These were already purchased, so this would be just reclassifying those to say, okay, we can take them out of the contingency dollars, take that off the books of the general budget, freeing up those funds. Gym door wraps, those are actually in place. If you get a chance, take a look at the in the high school gym. There'd be the doors that are adjacent to the Performing Arts Center. They now have the wraps on them. It looks very nice. It not only, it looks nice, it also protects the doors and it creates some symmetry because there's less doors on one side than the other side. So the wraps, it makes it look a little more symmetrical. So that was already taken care of. Some additional scene shop equipment, and then the adaptive swing for the elementary school, which was something that was planned at one point and taken off. So that's a swing for students who have mobility issues, so they still have access to playground equipment. So this is all very high level. It's not like we're ready to start making purchases. We wanted you to be aware of the thinking that we're going through. We'd certainly operate within policy in terms of those dollar amounts when we go to bid and so forth, and then start moving on this. But now that we know we're not up against this January 29th deadline, we feel much more comfortable making really sound decisions and slowing this down and making sure we do the right things.
What is, sorry, go ahead.
The utility vehicle, we didn't talk much about that, and wouldn't that fall under operational?
No, it's equipment, so it's a capital purchase. Operationals would be more like if you're paying someone to do something, or like utilities and that sort of thing, but because it's an item, it would be a capital piece.
Yeah, one like that, like, just pops in my head, cause I'm good at pricing stuff like that out, like, that's probably the brand new one, right? You go up to St. Croix and say,
Yeah.
give us like, I think use at school, it's gonna be used pretty lightly for what it's designed to endure. Get one that's a year old, like, not brand new, maybe it's only
Sure.
30. you
Yep.
know. It feels like we're kind of in that mode right now for budget purposes, and if we can do that. you know,
Yep,
it's
absolutely.
a little extra legwork maybe, but worth asking.
Yep, absolutely. We can certainly do that.
What is the date that this money has to be spent by?
They're actually, it'd be 5 years we have now. We went from January 29th to, not 5 years from now, 5 years from when the, from 2024, so 2029. So we have plenty of time. Yeah, which is very nice.
So did something get taken off, because I see there's a number 4 down?
Yeah, oh, yeah, thank you. I combined elementary security cameras as internal and external. They were listed separately, and I didn't change the numbers. Thanks for catching that. The reason I did that is Jason got numbers, but the numbers were together, so I didn't have numbers to separate it, so I just lumped them together.
Sure.
I have one more question.
Sure.
How are these, paths that haven't been addressed, how bad are they?
Some are in pretty rough shape, like crumbling around the edges, not just like, like a visible crack. They're crumbling. Yeah,
Along behind the stands.
yeah, that's a
That
rough
was
one.
Pretty bad,
Yep.
that, from all the construction being driven over.
No, the actual
What do you refer-
pathways, the,
Oh, the paths.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's
whatever,
paths.
whatever is on here.
Got the Miller overlay.
Yeah, and the parking lot, how's that, like, I can't think of anything that's really bad.
yep, so I don't know exactly, we'd have to get back to you. So I asked Dean to do an analysis, and he had already worked with some people when there wasn't snow all over to do an analysis, so that's what we're basing it on.
I think that was originally, they were gonna redo the whole thing, just as part of the project. So, and then I think they just pulled back
Yeah.
a bunch of square footage just to do what we had to do to get the
Mhm.
building in. So I think this was just finishing everything else that wasn't done, with this portion. That was original to the building.
And maybe you can tell us, I am picturing it in my head as like when it's not like you're taking out the surface and redoing it, it's like you're putting another protective layer over the top to help.
No, you would grind down like the top layer, because it should have multiple layers on there to pull off the top.
Put in where,
2-inch layer, yeah.
What if they get under it and there's rubble underneath it though?
They shouldn't go through the whole thing.
Well, but the base layer could be compaction issues.
I think it would have
Just what if?
by now is from them driving all their stuff on it during construction.
Yeah.
And that was why it was a big savings to not do it, and that's why it was one of those like no-brainer, like, is it gonna hold up? Yep.
Mhm, yeah.
And that's just, like, that was like 180,000 you can pull
Right.
out. Like, don't do it unless we think we can really do it later.
And Rod, do you remember what, they mentioned it today, how much the assumption was of the interest? So we ended up with 1.1 million. Do you remember what the assumption was that the budget was based on?
I don't.
It was considerably less than
Yes.
that. So like that money that's pulled out, a lot of it can be back on here simply because of that, because the interest that we earned was so much higher than expected, which was great.
All right, so this is information only, obviously nothing is happening until there's more from you.
Yeah, nothing's happening right now. I mean, we would like to make some moves on some, like the snow removal equipment. We'll certainly look into the idea of used equipment. That's what we did last time around too, like when that gator was used already. And we do have 3 quotes of comparable equipment. They're different brands, but 3 different quotes that we got already for that one. But once we lock in on the actual vehicle, then we could look in the used market to see what's available for sure. But we would like the consent to move forward on these issues as stated, if we've determined that we have the funds to do that. Just like the snow removal, we would love to get that as soon as we can to actually be able to benefit this year already. But there won't be anything between now and the next meeting, so we have some
If we
time.
approve that, they better put it on the main drive road.
So did you hear something about that?
I just drove my car on it.
Yeah, we're having conversations about that,
Yeah.
yeah.
How fast can we move on the cameras?
That one would take a little bit more because we don't have the specific quote. We'll need to have them come out and actually work with us to identify which cameras specifically. Right now, that's very, very rough numbers, so that would take a little bit longer before we get to it. That was one that we ranked high. We believe it's super important, and we knew we needed to do it anyway. This is another one. This wasn't like, hey, we had this new, there's money, let's do this thing that we had never talked about. But it's also a bigger ticket item than we had anticipated, so we'll have to figure that out.
But just to clarify, the cameras that are in place are fully functional.
Totally
They're just,
functional.
they're outdated and they're in need of replacement.
Yeah, there's a few issues we need to address in terms of like minor blind spots, but no, yeah, we're.
But whether it's now or next year or the year after, this money needs to get spent, because
Correct.
that needs to get upgraded.
Yes,
Okay.
yep, exactly.
And I'd like to hear more about the roof, like, to me, the essentials come first, and to make sure that we aren't eating away, so they already say XX square feet. What does the roof expert say? Like, if you're saving money by doing it all at once, right away, and you're
Yeah.
not fixing rotten drywall in the summertime.
But a portion was completed
Portion
with
was
the last.
completed, yeah, this is based on,
last.
the reason it says XX is there's a document that has this highlighted by the roof experts that looked at it already and identified those areas with really specific information. We just need to sit down, Rod, Dean, and myself, find that, figure out exactly what we're talking about, get a price on it. But yeah, agreed, those big ticket things that would create deferred maintenance issues down the road, we wanna take care of those.
Those are the additions. From 14 or 20. Yeah. Those were the additions to the elementary, so that weren't part of the original.
Gotcha.
So they went and did the re-roof
Of the
first
whole original, again, that
building,
makes
and then when
sense.
they added those additions, they didn't roof those sections.
Yeah.
Again, trying to
Say,
save as much as you could, because
Yeah.
they didn't need to be done
Look good then, yeah.
then.
Yeah,
But these ones now, are,
yeah,
and would be in the next couple of years.
yep. And all of these numbers are on the high end. We wanted to have all these estimates on the high end, so we're gonna hope to come in below on all of these when we finish the process, but we wanted kind of worst case scenario and where we sit with all of them.
can you just to clarify, because you have confirmed funds available, 400,000, but below that subtotal is 491,000. Is that, you have 400,000, but your wish list is 491?
Yep.
Or this list?
Yep, exactly.
And then the quoted cost there, that 54,000 doesn't,
That
add
means,
up.
those are the ones that we actually know, we've got a quote, this is what the price would be, like that, we know that adaptive swing is $1,203. The quote we have for the utility vehicle is $46,200.
I just when I add them up, I get 68,000. Is it because of that, the desks that are already been spent?
I know why, because the formula's wrong, yeah. Because the formula needs, because we added items, so I need to change this.
Okay, fair enough.
Get 67,000, is that what you got? Hopefully.
I have 68,923.
Well, let's see, I've got D, 4, D.
Not a huge deal. There'll be more to come, but I just wanted to
15.
verify all that.
Yep.
Okay, so in terms of action on this, we don't have this listed for any type of action. Do you want something on the next agenda?
We don't need action.
Okay.
If you want to push this to have action, you have the right to do that as a board. Right now, we have the authority, the way the policy is written, we have the authority to move forward with these, but certainly if you want to take official action, we can do that.
Okay.
Or we can say that when we chip away at this, we'll bring each one forward. Like, okay, here's utility vehicle, this is what we're looking at, and then bring that forward then. So I believe we're looking at that policy, and that's a policy that once the construction is done, some of the numbers will change, the spending authority will change and be back down to a lesser amount, but there's essentially we have a $10,000 threshold, a $25,000 threshold, and a $250,000 threshold that mean different things. That 250 is the one that will change, but if we operate within the 10 and the 25, that was, we would advise the board, bring the information forward, but not necessarily bring it for action.
Okay. So you'll operate within those policies,
Yep.
Unless someone here would like to
And
have
then you
action.
just keep, what we did last time, we kept bringing it up.
Yep.
Like you would bring up, like at this point, like, okay, we're gonna spend these ones and kind of get all of us, yeah, that's a
Yep.
really good idea.
Yep.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Before we leave the topic. When you were in these work sessions with all these, figuring all this stuff out, that was all public, right? Or was that?
Well, it was construction meetings. Okay, so like, I just wanna run, like, I don't know if you all remember, but we had to rebid this project. Remember, we bid it, and then we had to push it back and rebid it again because we were so far over. That's when a lot of these came out. So they were already in the original number, in original pricing. It was just, we were over budget, so we went out and rebid this whole project, whatever, a year and a half ago.
Yep.
Remember, and it pushed kind of that start date. We got like steel and precast and a few things going, but then it pushed everything else. So then in that time, we had meetings, multiple meetings about, okay, what do we pull out of here to make sure we are gonna stay under budget, and then rebid this out with these new items, like those pull-ups. So those were all in, it was just, I don't know all of them, I can't remember exactly which one, but like a lot of them were already, I know we talked about the milling overlay, I know we talked about even lunch tables and building out lights in those spaces and roofing, the cameras, that was all part of it, like, these things work, we don't need to do it. But again, those were the construction meetings with Market Johnson, us, Wold. I'm guessing there's some minutes that they would have, that Market Johnson would have, those, I mean, I remember being on the calls.
I think that I wasn't here, obviously, so I don't know the specifics, but typically construction meeting won't have a quorum of the board, so that's not gonna be public, but the results always are. Because then you bring forward the plan, like, hey, we discussed this and this is the scope of the referendum. So that's where those results would have likely been brought forward. As I'm looking through things that were not on the wish list, that we talked about from the beginning of the year, essentially, the gym door wraps, the adaptive swing, the specifics of the snow removal. I believe a vehicle dedicated to athletics was part of it, but I'm not 100% certain. But we added the snow removal conversation. That was a this year conversation that we added that in. It's under the scope of the question, but that would not have been, to the best of my knowledge, part of the initial conversation.
Yeah. I'm just worried a little bit about transparency, but I got some of my questions answered.
Well, and I would say that we would never have like every single piece of everything that's going in on these projects, like they wouldn't, I mean, you have bid documents, but you would, we would never put it in the actual referendum, like we're having down to 2,500 different things that this project's gonna have. I mean, that list of construction documents,
So that doesn't exist anymore.
not for the referendum, I mean, for like the bidding documents it does, but that's after the referendum's approved. Like you got the 22.9 million to build the auditorium, the athletic, and the elementary school. Now, out of that list, there's not every single thing, because we don't even have the architect on board yet, we don't have the general contractor on board yet, we don't have anything drawn yet. It's just a concept of, we're gonna give these spaces to the best of what we think should be done, and this is how we're gonna build them all, but we
And
don't
that's
know
where-
everything that goes into them.
And that's where that contingency conversation, like, I'll use an example. We've talked about where we had the issue with the follow spot, that it was a platform that we didn't think was safe, so we had them change that. That came out of those contingency dollars, because the way it was drawn, they built it to spec. So they did everything right the way it was designed. We, after the fact, determined that we weren't satisfied with that condition, So we had to have them change that, but nowhere in the referendum conversation was that screen that went from deck all the way up. That, but we determined that through like this process of having a conversation after the fact. So that's sort of, now is, the difference is it's a lump sum. It's not like, here's the need, what are we gonna do about it? It's, these are the funds that are left, and how are we going to invest them back in the district?
And then I just had one more thought, and I know it won't be popular, but what is the possibility of putting any of this towards early payoff?
Yeah, so you can do that. That's certainly, those are the two things you can do. You can spend it on stuff that is aligned to the questions of the referendum, or you can use those dollars to pay back the referendum. That you can't like put it in the general fund, but you can accelerate the payback. So certainly is an option. And I'll tell you, Danny, actually, we talked about that because when we saw that January 29th deadline, we thought we might have to. We thought there might not be any choice. We're just gonna have to do that because we don't have enough time to spend it.
But after Margaret and Johnson was hired, remember those board meetings where we had those documents and they had like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like I remember there were lists and lists and lists of stuff and there were screws and, I mean, all kinds of stuff on those documents.
Yeah, everybody's bids
Yeah.
has their proposal with all their things on it that they provide.
So that was where all the detailed stuff was.
All right, well, we will proceed with this as presented, unless someone here wanted to bring to the next meeting, a vote to push this to early payoff, which if somebody wants that, we can talk about it. Otherwise, we'll let you proceed under policy.
Okay.
So, is there anybody that's opposed to that or has any thoughts?
To clarify, final decision, some of it next meeting, work towards a little more detail.
Well, I'd say the final decision is in the hands of them, as long as they're working within policy and the way the referendum question was drawn. The board action, I guess, would be if somebody wanted to say, let's just put this to early payoff, then I'd like to do that tonight. We'll put that on the agenda and have a vote in 2 weeks. And then in the meantime, obviously, they wouldn't spend any money.
Right, so like the utility vehicle as an example, that would be one that we'd have a specific conversation because that is past that threshold. So that one would be a more detailed conversation before we would make that decision.
Plan for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, yep.
But you wanna do it soon, so.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we'd hope to have that, exactly. So, and what I think what we would likely do is bring the proposal with new equipment, this is the cost, and then once approved, let you know that our goal would be to target use, say, within 3 years. If we can find a deal with equipment, comparable equipment, within 3 years, just move on that because we'd already been authorized at a higher amount. That way we can not keep coming back like, oh, we found one here and we can save $6,000. So that's probably what we would do there. The smaller ones, we're just taking care of, like the football field mats, when they're under that amount, though that falls within that category of just operational spending that we would do without bringing it back to the board, but anything that 25 or above would be more of a conversation.
I guess one more question, kind of off of your, pushing this to early payoff, and Rod, maybe you can speak to it. If we did that route, right, we pushed that money back to early payoff, the mill rate is set. What impact does that have on mill rate on the local taxpayers based on the $22.9 million referendum that was passed? Really, no one's taxes are going to change, other than that year that it's paid off, is that correct?
That'd be my understanding, yeah.
Okay, so there would be no impact next year or the year after?
Right, we still have our scheduled payments to make,
Yeah.
just like in your regular mortgage.
Okay.
Now, the only caveat to that is conceptually it could make a difference if we restructure the debt at some point. Like if conditions change, often what school districts would do is we've got debt out several years. If there's a point at which it makes sense to restructure that debt, whether that's compact it and pay it off faster, or if conditions say, you know what, if we spread this out because we have a big project that we need to do, we could do that, and then technically it might have an impact sooner than payoff time.
But this just pushes us closer to the next referendum because the needs still exist.
Exactly. That's
I'm sorry, that's a good question. Glad you went
Yeah,
there.
just leading off of that, I'm just wondering with the need for possible operational referendums, if maybe people would and like, I don't know, just kind of respect the fact that, you know, honoring the taxpayer, putting some back towards the debt, maybe they would treat an operational referendum more willingly, you know, be more open-minded about it.
When you're talking about 29 million, I'm not sure, a couple $100,000 is,
But the perception of fiscal responsibility is very important.
This passed by a couple hundred votes, so
Yeah.
it's something to.
But again, that just, I guess my only thing would be Steve's great, I mean, the cameras. That's a need. A lot of this money's coming off of interest. Let's take care of it, because I'd hate to say, now we go 5 years and we don't have to pay those cameras.
100% agree.
And the roof, now we get a leak, and now we have a new roof and $100,000 damage inside.
I'm not saying it would need to be all of this.
Yeah, no,
you
yeah, I
know,
get it, yeah.
Maybe half or,
Yeah.
I don't know, something.
One more thing on the cameras too, I understand there's software, more advanced
Yep.
systems, artificial intelligence, that type of thing, correct?
Yeah, so once you upgrade the cameras, there's technology that's available that's not available on the old system. Like Matt said, the cameras still work, you can still see the areas, you can go back, you can review, all that works, but there's advanced technology that would be available, and also just like the clarity, just like, you know, just like TVs, the definition has increased significantly, so it's more effective.
Thanks for that information.
Yep.
Okay, hearing no one's interested in putting this on the agenda for a vote to pay it back, we will just move forward as you guys work with the policy.
Okay, that sounds good. And I appreciate all the questions, and know again that the goal here is to really save us money. Ultimately, we think we can invest this appropriately to save us money in the long run, not get in a situation where we're fixing things that didn't need to get broken in the first place. All right, moving on, we've got Social Schools for EDU. This is just the report card that they offer. We can open that up. We are very pleased with our partnership with Social Schools for EDU. They're super responsive, they're very helpful. Alicia is the go-between and does a lot of work with them. They've been wonderful to work with, and you can see it paying off. First, I'm gonna draw your attention to that blue bar graph right there. So that's the monthly viewers, month by month. You can see it increase month by month by month. We're getting more viewers. This might sound like it's sort of surface level and not that important, but it really is important. We have to tell our story. We're a wonderful district, we have a lot to offer. I think we do great things for kids, and we do great things in the community, and people need to know that. There will always be stuff, right, that upsets people in the community. We were talking about there was a lot of chatter on Facebook today about Spartan Drive and the condition of the snow removal. And certainly some legitimate points and some things we're gonna look at, but we don't want that to be the only conversation about our school district, because we know that is an important thing that we need to address. However, there's all this other stuff that's happening, and having that partnership to help tell the story is, I think, very beneficial. They also do a nice job of partnering with us to make sure that our other systems are operating well. Now, if you go on our website, you'll see our live feed on the website has the same information that's on Facebook. And they're doing that for us automatically, because we were concerned that we have a new modern website, but there was nothing on the live feed because it was all going on Facebook. They manage that for us, and it's the sort of thing that when we try to run more lean, and we reduce staff at the business office, or at the district office, with that reduction, we don't have a lot of capacity to do this stuff, so we can parse some of this off and have this contracted out without adding staff members. I think it puts us in a good position. If you can scroll back up, I should have started up here, but you can see that these are the two posts that they share that had the greatest reach. Reach is unique viewers that looked at a certain post. We have two posts that have 8,000, over 8,000 and over 10,000 unique viewers. That's not one person seeing it 6 times. That's unique people logging in and seeing. That's pretty incredible. And it's kind of cool if you see our two most popular, they're things we've talked about. We've got Somerset Spartan Hero Day, which was certainly a great success and a great community connector. And the other one was a community connector too. It was the 8th graders spending the day with Woodstock Builders. You can see what sort of stuff people like to see. They like to see us out in the community, and we want to do even more to get out in the community. Facebook is a good tool for connecting us with that. So that's that information. If you go lower, where are we here? Oh, I'm sorry, it's up there at the top. Thank you. So total followers were up to 3,938 followers. That's people that said, yep, I'm gonna follow the Somerset School District. That's up 140, and our average monthly viewers, 33,000. So if you scroll down to the table below, you can see comparable districts. We're getting in the mix with some districts that were looking like, how do they get that many people to interact? We're starting to move up that list and see that sort of interaction. This will only become more powerful as we get better about telling our own story. When staff members see that, okay, this stuff is getting out there and people are interacting and making comments, that's fun for people, gets them more involved. It's only helps us out to make sure people understand that we've got good stuff happening. So our intention is to continue this partnership and see where we can take it.
When's the renewal for the contract again?
We actually just received an email, I think today, about questions about our renewal. So I don't know what the timeline was, like when it was due, but the initial contact just happened. Do you remember, Alicia, what?
We do a tree or a
think I was
three-year
one of the-
contract?
We're on a
I think
one.
we're on a one, because we're gonna try it.
Yeah,
It was like 13,000.
I don't know
Rings
what
a
it
bell.
was.
11.5, yeah.
Did a three-year contract, we'd get a little bit of a discount.
Correct.
We wanted to review it after one.
Yep. Yeah, so we've got some time. Certainly you can think about it, and then we'll bring that. That's one we'll bring back and have as an action item if we want to continue. I would certainly recommend that we would. All right, next one, school district calendar. Now we have the right one linked. I'm sorry about that. Last time we had the wrong calendar linked. This, the only reason we have it here is because school calendar is a big important thing. We want many looks at it before we'll take it for action at the next board meeting. Remember, this was the one that we made some adjustments. There's a recommendation to see if it would be possible to have the last day of school before Memorial Day, and we've come up with a model that allows that to take place. Last day with kids is May 28th. There's some flexible professional learning that allows that to happen. And everything else, for the most part, follows sort of the same structure that we've had in the past. Not any big changes to the calendar. Some minor tweaks here and there.
One question on that, like the last meeting you talked about adding 2 minutes to every day.
Yes.
Do you have, was that 2 minutes at the end of the day? Like, what, have you talked about that
Yeah,
yet?
we've talked about it a little bit. We still need to talk a little bit more about transportation, because that's the thing that's gonna drive that. We don't wanna start high school any earlier if we can help it. So that's one of our things, to not start, because of the 0 hour. We have a lot of kids that participate in 0 hour. To drive that even earlier, we think would be problematic. So our goal is to keep that where it is and have the least impact. The good news is, it will not impact kids in terms of like having to wake up earlier, because the buses are here. Half the time, they're sitting waiting before we let them in anyway, so we can get that 2 minutes of additional instruction without really like changing the routine of families.
My next question just on that is, I know a neighboring district, did they push their start time later? New Richmond, I believe.
Yeah, New Richmond is considering it. I don't think, I think it's still
Okay,
under
okay.
consideration.
So like,
Stillwater just did.
Okay, so my question is, like, what is the average start and end time of a day? Because I mentioned this concept of 2 minutes to my kids, and they said, well, why don't we just go 20 more minutes if we can, you know, a longer break or change, you know, the school year?
Yeah.
Because they're like, we're here till 3:20 anyways, what's it matter? So I'm just curious, what is the average out there start and end time of a day?
So I can tell you what it was about 5 years ago, because I did an analysis regionally about 5 years ago. I don't know it offhand.
Yeah.
I can say that we are probably, like our calendar, we have, so I'll talk a couple metrics on a calendar. We're on the upper range of teacher contract days. When I say upper range, it's within a couple days. We're at 192, you'll see from like 189 to 192, but not a lot at 192, that's where we are. We're right at, I would say, lower to low average on number of student days. Again, within a couple, we're not talking a lot. In terms of the length of day, one of the things that drives that is the fact that we're a single campus and we only have, so single campus, single tier busing gives us way more flexibility than districts that don't have that. Because we can start all of our schools within a couple minutes of one another, they just go from one school to the next to the next. If you're in a situation where you have to have 2 or sometimes even 3-tier busing, meaning like elementary has all their busing take place at one point and then high school at another, those are most of the districts that are having the conversations about school start time, because they're talking about flipping. The traditional model was high school starts earlier, elementary starts later. There's a lot of research to suggest that it might be developmentally more appropriate to have high school start later. Just the rhythm of their sleep pattern, better for mental health, there's a lot of research around that. That's what's driving that change more than anything. In terms of the number of minutes and number of days, there's a tipping point at which we could legally add an hour and 20 minutes to every school day and be done way earlier, because right now we are only beholden to the number of instructional hours, not days, but that's not gonna work well for student learning. So what we're trying to do is say, what do we need in terms of the number of minutes to run a really effective schedule? And then how many days do we need to deliver that to make sure that we're meeting the requirement and able to deliver what we want to deliver? I've mentioned this before, you will very rarely ever hear me advocate for fewer student days or for fewer minutes. I will always be advocating for more instructional time, within reason, obviously. I would love to see a few more minutes added to our day, but not to shorten the calendar, to get a few more minutes of flexibility within our schedule.
Yeah, we've never had the conversation, at least I haven't on the board. That's interesting stuff. My last question, then I'll be done with this calendar thing. You just mentioned we're on the high end of contract days, is that what you said? Is that good or bad for teachers' retention, recruitment?
Here's why I think it's a really good thing. We have a lot of professional learning. Because of that, it allows us those professional learning days on a very regular basis. And one of teacher recruitment and retention is not just about like a schedule that looks good on paper. It's about making sure we're feeding the teachers with the information they need to be successful. So by having well-structured professional learning, I think we position ourselves to say, you know what, you're gonna be supported. We're not gonna say, start the year and we'll talk about how it went at the end, where we have opportunities to support and learn along the way.
Interesting, okay, thanks.
Yep. All right, I'm supposed to keep talking.
Dave,
I'm not done yet, that was a lot, I was ready to call it a day.
you said 192, but this calendar says 187. Can you explain where the other 5 are?
Yeah, those are holidays that are built in and those professional learning days. So the contract day, when we say 192, we subtract 3 holidays out right off the bat. So that means it's actually 189, and then the 2 flexible professional learning days of 7.5 hours each make up to get that 192.
Again, I'm gonna push on it. It's not the calendar, we talked about it last time, but trying to figure out how to schedule so that we don't have all of our high school teachers out when we have conferences.
Yeah, yep,
Just something to look at since we still have it scheduled for a Thursday.
yep.
You know, and there's gonna be, volleyball and cross country, and I don't know how things land
Yeah, I don't
this
think it was
year.
the teachers, it was that the parents and the kids weren't coming.
Well, I think, or there's teachers that were gone too, but yeah, and parents, if you're at volleyball or cross country and
Yep.
whatever else is going on.
So one of the things we're actually, when we're gonna have this conversation, we've started it internally already, we know it's happened in the past, a conversation across Middle Border about trying to align conference schedules and say, hey, can we have competition-free days? Where we can just say, you know what, if we have, this is when we wanna do conferences, if we can have the majority of the Middle Border Conference schools say, yep, let's not have that happen. We can schedule conferences when we think it makes the most sense. And I agree with you, that's important, but what we wanna make sure is conferences is for everyone, and we don't wanna create a situation where we create a less than favorable conference schedule for a smaller percentage of kids that are involved in whatever those sports would be. So what we would rather do is create the conference schedule and then work with the athletics department to say, let's just not schedule something for that time. Kind of go in reverse.
And I guess I'm just saying, when I go to see for a middle school student, and I only get to see half the teachers,
Yeah,
like, that's an issue.
totally agree. Yep. Yep, so we are talking about that.
I think we touched on maybe considering student-led versus more like, traditional, and then how that's, encouraged, not less optional, more like encouraged,
Sure.
required to be more engagement promoting.
Yeah, the thing I'll say to that, Corey, is that it's, in my experience, it's not student-led or not, it's the quality of the preparation for that experience, because I agree 100%. I don't like the idea of having that one touch point that's scheduled be something that could have happened with a video or at home, like, hey, go home and do this. Want to make sure that that engagement is high. Student-led conferences can be structured in a way where there's a lot of teacher involvement, and actually it's a I would say a more engaging experience, but it has to be done right. All right, I will continue. Last thing on here, summer school memo. This is really, there's nothing to this other than we have we believe it's in policy, at least if not past practice, that we bring the summer school dates to you. This is for the 2027. There was a typo. We had 2026. That's because we were doing this in December and 2027 sounded like so far away. Now it's 2026 already. But these are for this, not the upcoming summer school session, the one after. With the 2 sessions, with the weeks spelled out there, and this is just so people can start to be thinking about their summer planning. Nothing other than that.
Excellent, so that will come back in 2 weeks for approval? Do you need approval on that?
That is a good question. Oh, it does say this,
Possible
yeah,
action,
yeah. So when we bring the calendar back, we'll bring both of those back as,
Action.
yep, as action.
Okay.
Yep.
excellent. And you don't want action tonight on those?
No.
Okay, very good. Anything else
That is all I have.
on your 15-minute report? But hey, it was good information.
Those were your questions.
Yeah, well, they're good questions. Next item, the consent agenda. Does anybody want to make a motion to?
Make a motion to approve 981.
I'll second.
Was that just 9A1?
There isn't.
Nothing for 2. Perfect, yep. Now that I read it. There's a motion by Bruce, I hear a second from Danny. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 10, general information. January 19th is our next meeting. It's a regular session. There is a listening session 30 minutes prior. Please sign up if you can be here. The next one I'll add to that, it's not on here, but being that it's general information, we're talking about meetings. February 16th is the Fine Arts Festival. I believe it's 6:30 to 8:30. Is there any interest amongst the board to either change our meeting night or maybe bump our meeting a half hour earlier, start at 5:30, work with administration to maybe have a scaled back agenda so that we can all be out here at 6:30 so if you want to attend. I bring it up because it's PAC's open. I think it would be great to all of us be over there for the first time.
And we've talked about this every year, trying to avoid this conflict in our schedule.
So is there interest to start at 5 or 5:30 just to ensure we're done?
What,
Are you sure it's on the 16th? I thought it was a week later.
Well, I looked at one of my kids' choir concert, and that's how I looked at it today. So,
Let me take a look.
They hit, huh?
I have. That's what I read today on the documentation I came home.
well, maybe we can just bring this back to the next meeting.
Is everybody okay with the shorter notice? I mean, that's still a month, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll confirm it. It'll be on the next meeting.
Sounds
And then the last thing, just a reminder to anybody watching, listening, deadline for schoolwork candidates to file candidacy paperwork is tomorrow, 5 p.m. The district office will be open and available until 5 p.m. There's a link on the agenda, I'm guessing on the website.
Yep.
Or come into the office and obtain any paperwork.
Does that involve a notary? Will that be available for people if they need it? Okay.
Perfect. Item number 11, district celebrations. Steve, can I start with you?
I've got nothing tonight.
Perfect. Corey?
Hope everybody had a great holiday and is ready to dig in.
Ian?
Yeah, welcome back, everybody.
Lori?
I love how the elementary home and school partnership tool lists those specific questions that adults can ask children about their learning. I know if I ask, what did you learn at school today? My kids and my grandkids just, well, not my kids anymore, but them, nothing. But if I say, tell me about a book or a story that you read at school today, they have a lot more to say. And it's true that when adults show interest in what children are learning, children have a greater interest in their learning, so it's important. Middle school conferences are just a little more than a week away. On Thursday, the 15th, we have a lot of athletic events happening at our high school and middle school this week. We had a girls' basketball game, it's probably still going on now. Thursday, we've got wrestling at the middle school, high school and middle school, a triple duel. Boys' basketball game at the high school, another girls' basketball game on Friday, all home events. Make sure you remember to purchase your 50/50 tickets and support scholarships for our graduating seniors. And we are already starting to get transcripts in from last year's seniors and sending out checks to colleges for next semester's tuition. The scholarship applications are due at the end of the month, Friday, January 30th, at the end of the school day. And this one application last year provided access to 54 scholarships worth a total of $88,500. So please get your applications in.
Bruce?
Just sort of said there's a lot of stuff going on, and I think there's also a robotics on Saturday at our school,
Oh.
which is always something interesting if you've never been. So make sure, yep, it's home on Saturday.
And they're doing really well.
So-
They're super competitive. They do a nice job.
Yeah, so just, I mean, just another thing to come and check out and see other things we offer, so. That's it.
Dan?
First of all, I'm really glad there was school today. It was a long break and the kids were ready to go back. Long great break. And then also congratulations to all the wrestlers at Northern Badger last week. Cora Bigley was amazing in the girls wrestling champion and fun to watch.
Excellent. I think you guys have covered it all, so I will take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Bruce, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Steve, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes, meeting's adjourned at 7:48.